Members, good morning. This is the Bills Committee on Stamp Duty Amendment Bill 2025. It's the appointed time. We have a quorum, so I call the meeting to order. So we first invite the government officials to join us. Joining us today are Mr. Bruno Lok, Deputy Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. Also from the FSTB, Ms. Josephine Tsang, Principal Assistant Secretary. We also have Ms. Leung Wing-chi, Deputy Commissioner from the Inland Revenue Department, and also Ms. Chen Yu-chen, Chief Assessor also from the IRD. We also have Mr. Wallace Ng, Senior Assistant Law Draftsman from the Department of Justice. So will the government officials first walk us through the bill, please? Thank you, Chairman. Members, we're tabling this bill to give effect to a proposal under the 2025-26 budget. So we propose to adjust the rate of ad valorem stamp duty so that the $100 stamp duty will apply to properties at $4 million, up from $3 million. Now, when people buy properties, they have to pay the ad valorem stamp duty. The lowest rate is $100. Currently, that rate applies to properties at $3 million or below. With our proposal in place, properties up to $4 million will be subject to the flat rate of $100. Once you factor in the marginal relief, we expect 15% of transactions to be covered by the new arrangement, and the government will be foregoing roughly $400 million in annual revenue to benefit property buyers early on. Starting from the 26th of February this year, the date the budget was delivered, an order was made under the Public Revenue Protection Ordinance. So that means this new arrangement has been given the full force and effect of the law starting from 11 a.m. on that day. That's to ease the burden of property buyers. That's all from me. Thank you. The floor is now open for questions for members. So let's first discuss the policy matters of the bill. Now, here's the lineup. Mr. Benson Lok, Dr. Johnny Ng, Mr. Ambrose Lam, Ms. Maggie Chen, Mr. Bill Tang, followed by me. Let's do 5 minutes per member, questions and answers inclusive. Mr. Benson Lok. Chairman, we dropped all the cooling measures some time ago, and now this year the budget proposed changing the ad valorem stamp duty rate so that properties up to $4 million will be subject to the $100 rate. That's good news. Among the 4 priorities for young people is home ownership, and this step is a positive step, meaning it's now easier for property buyers to buy a property, and this is a positive outcome. More people will stop renting and buying their properties instead. Now, take Kowloon Bay as an example. For a $3.8 million flat with the 1.5% stamp duty, people will have to pay $57,000 in stamp duty. That's equivalent to the monthly income of a young couple. Now we are lowering the stamp duty to $100 as a flat rate. So that means buying a property at that price range will be cheaper than renting. So young people are now more likely to buy a home instead. That's why I support this proposal. More transactions are being recorded in the secondary market, meaning more people are now trading up. in properties, and developers have also launched many affordable flats on the market. So we are foregoing $400 million in revenue each year, but we're also reinvigorating the property market. So can the government tell us in the future what factors will we look at when we further adjust our ad valorem stamp duty to cover more properties? So what factors will we look at when we can also cover $5 million or $6 billion properties for the $100 flat rate stamp duty? Deputy Secretary, as Mr. Benson Look said, this move will help property buyers looking to buy cheaper properties. On further changing this rate, we have to bear in mind the fiscal implications for the government. We have to bear in mind the situation, the fiscal position of the government and the property market at that time. We consider these factors whenever we think about our concessionary measures each year. Dr. Johnny Ng. I have a similar question to that raised by Mr. Benson Look, and that's what we look at when we set these rates. Why not set the rate at $3.5 million or $5 million instead? I believe the government took into account its means, its financial resources. Will the government also consider factors about first-time home buyers? Can we give more concessions to first-time home buyers to foster their sense of belonging when they buy cheaper properties? Many flats are offered in the price range $5 to $6 million. At $4 million, there aren't that many options. So can the Deputy Secretary tell us more about the criteria and the way forward on this point? Mr. Look. When we cover more properties under this flat rate, there will be fiscal implications, and we're also staring at fiscal deficits for some years ahead. So for any concessionary measures, we have to take a holistic view of factors. So I cannot say what we will do for sure. So we have to bear in mind the fiscal position, the property market, and the economy before arriving at a decision. What about for first-time home buyers? Can there be further support measures? So we take a holistic view of things. So we launch this measure this year to help people trying to buy a flat at $4 million or below so that young people can get on the housing ladder sooner. Mr. Ambrose Lam, I want to declare an interest. My law firm does work on property transactions. Now, from what I've seen, the cooling measures were dropped and then more activity could be seen in the property market. There was little activity in the past. Now we have lowered the stamp duty, and you see way more transactions involving cheaper flats. Of course, nothing's for certain given Donald Trump's tariffs. We lower the stamp duty, we get less revenue, but then we will get more by taking less. That's because when you have more transactions, you have a more robust market, we will actually end up with more tax revenue. Now, previously, because of the stamp duty, there were few transactions. The property market was in doldrums. So I support what Mr. Benson Look and Dr. Johnny Ng have said. This move has made a real difference. So can I urge the government to consider that if it works, can we further reinvigorate the property market so that things will look up for our economy? Anything to add from the DS? As I said in my response to the two other members, the property market was still adjusting last year, and then towards the end of the year, transactions saw a pickup. Now, some property developers said more people were buying cheaper flats. We don't have the specific figures yet. Now, we get the stamp duty 30 or 40 days after a property transaction is executed. So it will take a while before we get a full picture. As the member said, there are volatilities in the global economy. On giving further assistance for certain home buyers, we'll have to look at the macro environment, the tax revenue for the government, and also the circumstances at that point before arriving at a decision. Any follow-up? No. Ms. Maggie Chen. Thank you, Chairman. I give my full support to this change, covering properties up to $4 million for the flat rate of $100. For middle-class families with children, they have many bills to pay. They may want to buy a flat. They need help. So I hope this proposal can help middle-class home buyers. I also echo the comment from other members that this move about covering properties up to $4 million with the $100 stamp duty rate is not going far enough. Now, for potential prospective home buyers looking at $5 million flats, just look at the facts, look at our data starting from February, when the order was made $100 in stamp duty for flats up to $4 million, you could see much greater activity in the property market, and that's good for the economy. So let's look at further relaxing the requirements to $5 million. Now, my questions are as follows. For the marginal relief, now we are covering flats at up to $4.32 million. So for flats up to $4.32 million, they will qualify for the marginal relief. How did we arrive at this level? Now, up to January 2025, we look at the data, and we expect this new arrangement will cover 10,600 transactions, and that includes non-domestic and domestic properties with this new arrangement. Now, given the global uncertainty with the economy, what do we expect the transaction levels will be given the new arrangement?
Deputy Secretary, thank you. The relief rate is part of the mechanism. Say, for example, for property valued at $4 million, we have to pay $100 of stamp duty. If there is no marginal relief, for property valued at $4 million and one, they will have to pay $60,000 of stamp duty. So a difference in $10,000 will result in a significant rise in the stamp duty that the buyers have to pay. For property valued at $4 million to $4.323 million, they have to pay $100 plus 20% of the excess over $4 million. So that home buyers will not have to pay significantly more in terms of stamp duty just because their property is valued at slightly more than $4 million. So how did we arrive at the $4.3 million? The next band after $4.323 billion is 1.5%. For property valued at more than $4.323 million, it's cheaper for them to use the 1.5% rate. This is the reason why we don't use a round number. Any follow-up questions? I have another question. Do you have some more updated estimates? Ms. Maggie Chen, why did you not raise the threshold to $5 million? You said that you would forego $400 million if you raise now the threshold to $4 million. How much revenue will we forego if you raise the threshold to $5 million? Well, if we raise the threshold to $5 million, we will lose $1 billion. So we will forego $600 million more revenue if we raise the threshold to $5 million. Any other updated figures? The paper said that according to the figures as of January 2025, it is estimated that there will be 10,600 transactions per annum. Do you have any more updated figures? Given the global economic situations, which is rather volatile, do you have any more updated estimates? I'm talking about paragraph 5 of the paper. We made our estimates based on the transactions this year. I will give you a more updated figure after the meeting. I know that you have the February figures now. Next, Mr. Tan Ka-pyo. Thank you. Now, the $100 stamp duty threshold is now further raised to encourage people who want to form a family, purchase a property that is valued at a level that is chargeable to only $100 stamp duty. Over the past decade, when the property prices were high, when a lot of sandwich class people could not afford a flat, many people then opted for rentals instead of purchasing a property. I thank the government for taking on board our suggestions to put in place measures by lowering the stamp duty to encourage young people to have a family and purchase a flat. Chairman's been talking about this as well. I'd like to talk about the impact of this policy. This is not the first time we raised the threshold. How many first-time home buyers can we help by having this policy? Second, this proposal of charging $100 stamp duty on properties at lower values since the unification, has we ever lowered the threshold? Say, changing the threshold from $4 million to $3 million. This is all about expectation. Now we are raising the threshold from $3 million to $4 million when the property prices are stabilizing. Are we going to lower the threshold in the future? Thank you. Deputy Secretary. We have never lowered the threshold in the past. Since 2013, we have put in place some cooling measures and we have adjusted stamp duty, but we never lowered the threshold for the $100 stamp duty. We want to help people purchase a flat. That's our policy goal. Thank you. what is the effectiveness of this policy, how it helps first-time home buyers. Because 2 years ago, we raised the threshold once. We target different people at different times. 15% of the transactions are going to benefit. That include non-residential and residential property transactions, but 90% of them are residential transactions. Whenever we lower the stamp duty, people are going to benefit, but it's difficult for us to tell you how many people are able to purchase a flat because of our policy. I wonder if the administration have any figures on how many first-time home buyers purchase a flat because of the policy or after the measure has been rolled out. Deputy Commissioner, please. When the taxpayers submit documents for stamp duty payment, they don't have to declare whether they are first-time home buyers or not, so we don't have the relevant information at hand. I will follow up at other occasions. Thank you. Ms. Doreen Kong. Thank you, Chairman. I support changing the threshold to $4 million. I share Ms. Maggie Chan's view. Now we're trying to encourage people to purchase property. I think that we should further raise the threshold to $5 million. The administration said that they are going to forego hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of revenue. But if in turn we're able to help young people or young families purchase a property, then it will make this policy even better. So I hope that the administration will consider this. Also, I think that we should think outside the box. Should we allow people to withdraw from their MPF account to pay for the stamp duty? We may not allow them to take out their MPF for down payment, but I wonder why we don't allow our young people to withdraw from their MPF account to pay the, say, $60,000 or $70,000 of stamp duty. That's a lot to young families. I hope that the administration will consider this. We should allow people to withdraw from their MPF account to pay for stamp duty for, say, subsidized sale flat or properties at lower values. For properties exceeding $4 million or lower than $4.323 million, the IRD said that the rates will be $100 plus 20% of the excess over $4 million. Previously, the rate of change for values over the line would be 10%, so that people won't have to pay significantly more just because their property exceed the threshold. For a property valued at $4.32370, if you use the 20% rate, the stamp duty is $64,856. For property at $4.5 million, they will have to pay $67,500. But if we use the 10%, say for example, if we charge 10% of the excess over $4 million as the rates, then the stamp duty is just $32,000. the curve is much flatter. How come we change the rates of change from 10% to 20%? Why such a big change? Second, Chairman, my second question has to do with administrative procedures. I am a lawyer for property transactions. Because currently the rates is 10%. I'm worried if the legal practitioners will get used to the new rates. I wonder if you will step up publicity to educate the legal sector of the change. Thank you. That has to do with the marginal relief that I mentioned. Let me give you a chart. Please turn on the projector, please. As you can see, the red line, well, as I mentioned, for the portion above $4 million, we want to see if we use if it's cheaper if we use the 20% of the excess or 1.5%. If you use the previous percentage, only when the property reaches $4.7 million, will the marginal relief be higher than the stamp duty that the buyer now have to pay? If you use the 1.5%, then the people will have to pay, say, 2.2% if the property is lower than $4.3 million. We want to keep the 1.5% rates for property valued at slightly more than $4 million. If we use the 10%, then the 1.5% band will be completely gone, and it will jump directly to 2.2%. That's why we use the $100 plus 20% of the excess over $4 million. Chairman, I have something to add. I think that this is not comprehensive enough. Just because we want to keep the 1.5% band, home buyers who purchase property at slightly more than $4 million have to pay significantly more in terms of stamp duty. Thank you.
Chairman, one comment. We adopt 20% for the excess. No people will have to pay extra stamp duty because of this. Payers of the stamp duty will be paying less under the new arrangement. Our goal is to help property buyers of flats at $4 million or below buy a flat more easily. So we try to keep as much of the stamp duty system as possible. The point is simply to apply the $100 stamp duty to properties up to $4 million. Any follow-up from Mr. Rincon? No, you made a very good point. That was a great question. People wonder if your flat is just a bit more costly, you will expect a steep rise in the stamp duty, and that's not a good look. So people will have to bargain with the seller for a slightly lower price. And that's how you can avoid a much higher stamp duty. Chairman, we offer the marginal relief precisely because we want to avoid this steep rise in the stamp duty. Once you hit $4 million, you start to approach the 1.5% level, so you don't get a steep rise, and that's precisely because of the marginal relief. Thank you. So This is not putting yourself in the shoes of the buyer, but rather from a different perspective. Mr. Eric Yim. I believe this new rate will stimulate transactions, and this will be good for our property market. I fully support this new proposal. As other members have said, we will be taking less, but we may be getting more. So my question is, with this new arrangement, developers may be willing to buy land to build cheaper flats. How much extra revenue do we expect from this kind of situation? Do we have a ballpark figure? Now, maybe my following worry is unwarranted, but I'm wondering, will there be people exploiting this new arrangement? Say they were going to buy a bigger flat, but now they try to buy two smaller flats and then link up the two smaller flats because they will be paying much less in stamp duty. Of course, there are rules governing such shenanigans, but I'm wondering if the government will be reiterating such restrictions, and when this kind of thing does happen, what penalties will apply? Deputy Secretary. People buy flats not just by considering the stamp duty. Other factors are also at play. On whether there will be more property developers buying land, my response is the stamp duty is just one among the many factors. Home buyers and developers will have to consider the entire economy and other macro factors. We haven't assessed how much extra revenue will arise because buying land or buying a home requires consideration of a broader range of factors. Now over to my colleague from the IRD. Now, on whether there will be people exploiting the new arrangement, meaning people buy two smaller flats under two separate contracts and then link up the two flats. Now, we have rules under our tax laws. When two transactions constitute one bigger transaction, we take into account the values of the two properties in a single transaction. Does that answer your question, Mr. Yim? I think it does. You wouldn't have found out such cases unless you go out of your way to investigate the cases. So we will have to look at the situation based on the Inland Revenue Ordinance. So you won't be issuing guidelines because of this change. Is that right? In the instruments, there will be a declaration about whether a certain property transaction will be part of a larger transaction or part of a series of transactions. I think the solicitors involved will deal with the instruments with care. Mr. Yim's question is whether someone has tried this. Has the IRD found out such cases? When developers buy flats, we invoke this ordinance too. Say a property wants to buy 80% of the flat, the developer will have to buy the flats one by one. The agreement may say something like this. If the developer fails to secure 80% of the flat, the transaction will be cancelled. So in such cases, we look at the value of all the flats altogether in assessing the stamp duty. So you don't look at the flats one by one. You look at the entire transaction as a whole. So a single transaction may involve many flats. So we charge at the higher rate of the stamp duty. We look at the aggregate value. Mr. Eric Yim, does that answer your question? Yes. Now it's my turn. I welcome this change and I support this move. The FTU has been calling for relaxation of this arrangement. The $100 rate used to apply to $2 million flats. We have been calling for this change for many years. We started making these calls when flat prices started rising to ease the burden for younger home buyers. Now flat prices are falling. We need a more robust property market, and now the government is finally making this change. There will be a difference in the property market, especially for first-time home buyers buying smaller flats. They will be able to save on stamp duty payment. The savings will be tens of thousands of dollars. Now, here are my concerns. Now, $4 million flats will be covered by the $100 rate. Were there cases of abuse? We have just discussed the case of people buying two smaller flats, and then combining them. And my concern is about short-term speculation. Some investors buy mid-level flats at $8 million. Now that we get a much lower rate for cheaper flats, so making a profit becomes easier. So will that lead to more investors targeting cheaper flats, and will that lead to greater speculation of cheaper flats, making cheaper flats harder to buy for home buyers? Has this been assessed? Can I also clarify another point, and that is that for subsidized sale flats, they are sold at a discount. From what I've heard, most such SSFs are subject to the $100 stamp duty. So people wonder, those SSFs' original price is actually above $4 million. They are sold at below $4 million because of the discount. And when the premium has to be paid, how will the flat price be calculated? Once you factor in the premium to be paid, government revenue is at stake. Is that part of the consideration in this proposal? Chairman, I will first discuss the short-term speculation problem. You need both a buyer and a seller for short-term transactions to happen. Such transactions have been at the low level. We don't see any major signs of a shift in the transaction patterns. This arrangement has been in place for just over a month. So far, we haven't seen any short-term resales. We don't see a spike in such transactions. On SSFs, my colleague from the IRD can give a reply. On the stamp duty for SSFs, our IRO says the stamp duty is assessed based on the value of the property. SSFs usually come with clauses about the price. So SSF's values tend to be lower than freely transferable flats, and we assess the stamp duty accordingly. When the premium has to be paid, no extra levy is needed under the Inland Revenue Ordinance. So it's because of the alienation or resale restrictions of the SSFs that SSFs come with a lower value. Some members will speak for a second round. Ms. Maggie Chen. I want to declare that my law firm also does work on property conveyancing. I thank the chairman for allowing me to speak for the second round. I have a follow-up question. Now, when you apply the $100 stamp duty to $5 million flats, the government will be foregoing $1 billion in annual revenue instead. So you go from $4 million to $5 million, you forego another $600 million. But we cannot shy away from the fact that our property market drives the development of other industries. SMEs and home buyers both matter. You have to consider people's lives and the economy. You can see that applying the $100 stamp duty rate to $5 million flats will be a positive step. Look at our infrastructure projects. They cost way more. So we should explore ways to extend this arrangement to flats at $5 million or above. If we think $5 million is going too far, then how about we consider first-time home buyers? Now, for middle-class families struggling to buy a flat, they want to own their home. Can we do something for this group of people? Can we have stamp duty concessions for first-time home buyers? That's something we should consider as the next step. And I want to confirm one point. When you go from $4 million to $4 million, we're saying that the 1.5% rate does not apply to any flat above $4 million. The real threshold is actually $4,323,780. So actually, the rate works like this. You pay $100 for the first $4 million, and then you pay 20% of the excess over $4 million. Is that how it works, Deputy Secretary? Yes, I can confirm that's how it works. We have to look at the macro environment in making any decision, and I note the member's comment. Now I have some questions. For first-hand properties to be sold, and then you also consider the second-hand properties on the market. So altogether, you have 4,800 flats, second-hand homes at $4 million or below. So do we know how many first-hand flats are there that are priced at $4 million or below? We don't have the figure at hand.
Over the past 1 year, for properties valued at various values, we have the total number. For properties valued between $3 and $4 million, we have 8,000 transactions. $4 to $4.5 million, 4,000 transactions. Below $3 million, 13,000 transactions. But we don't divide them into first-hand or second-hand. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes? Ms. Maggie Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I have a question. If I have a property that is valued at below $4 million and I want to purchase a parking space of $600,000, then in a single lease, I would have purchased a $4 million property and a $600,000 parking space. How much stamp duty would I have to pay? Second, say, for example, on the same day, I purchase a property and a parking space, and if the two transactions are settled into different sales and purchase agreement, in other words, there was a lease for a parking space and another lease for a property. Will you treat that as a same transaction or a series of transactions? Thank you. I'd like to ask the IRD to take this question. Thank you, Ms. Chan, for the question. You have answered your own question. We separate the two transactions into two different leases. So we use the total amount to calculate the stamp duty. Thank you. No other question. Any other questions from the members? I think that our views are clear. We support the amendment. At the same time, we ask the administration to further relax the threshold to help first-time home buyers and families. Or perhaps the administration can offer some other support measures for first-time home buyers to show the administration's commitment to support families who want to purchase a property. Thank you. Now, before we go into the clause-by-clause examination, this Stamp Duty Amendment Bill 2025 will alleviate the burden of people who want to purchase properties at lower values. This is a policy that benefits the people. I don't think that is controversial. The administration has taken into account the views submitted during the consultation for the budget. So if there is no objection from the members, I don't think that we need to ask the public to submit their written views to us. Thank you. Any objections? Thank you. As all members think that there is not a need to invite for written submissions, then we now come to the clause-by-clause examination.
OK，而家
Please refer to CB bracket 2390/25 and the marked up copy CB bracket 1536/2025 bracket 01. Would the administration walk us through the clauses? Please use the Chinese version. I will ask the IRD to lead us through the clause-by-clause examination. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I will read out the long title of the Stamp Duty Amendment Bill 2025. Amend the Stamp Duty Ordinance to give effect to a proposal in the budget introduced by the government for the 2025-2026 financial year to adjust the valorum stamp duty chargeable on a conveyance on sale or an agreement for sale of an immovable property. Clause 1, short title and commencement. This ordinance may be cited as the Stamp Duty Amendment Ordinance 2025. This ordinance is deemed to have come into operation at 11 a.m. on the 26th of February 2025. Any questions? Please proceed. Clause 2. The details are set out in clauses 3 and 4. Clause 3. After section 77, we're going to add the transitional provisions, section 78, to provide for the transitional matters of the amendment ordinance. Please refer to page 1 of the marked up copy. Section 78, bracket 2. The pre-amended ordinance continues to apply to an instrument that was executed before 26th of February 2025. an agreement for sale that supersedes another agreement for sale made between the same parties and on the same terms before that date. And that agreement should be made before the 26th of February 2025. Or an conveyance on sale that is executed in conformity with an agreement for sale made before that date. And this transitional provisions is similar to Section 77 under the existing stamp duty ordinance. I have a question. Have you ever had a case where a buyer want to save on stamp duty after the proposal of, say, raising the threshold is out, but the original owner denied the buyer's wish to amend the agreement? We don't have such information. So no such disputes has happened before. We have never seen it. Thank you. Please proceed. Clause 4 is to amend first schedule. To change the rates under Part 1 of Scale 1 and Scale 2. Members may refer to page 3 of the marked up copy to page 22 of it. From page 3 to page 4 of the marked up copy is about Part 1 of Scale 1 of the rates. Clause 4 bracket 1 is to amend the Part 1 of Scale 1 A to C of the rates. A is to raise the threshold of $100 stamp duty from $3 million to $4 million. B is about the marginal relief. The property values is amended to $4 million to $4.32378 million. The calculation for stamp duty is $100 plus 20% of the amount by which the amount or the value of the consideration exceeds $4 million. For C, the considerations or amount of the value is amended to $4.32378 to $4.5 million. The stamp duty is calculated at a rate of 1.5%. Any questions? No, please proceed. Clause 4 of bracket 2 is to amend Scale 2, A and C. The amendment to the numbers is the same as made to Part 1 of Scale 1 of the rates. You may refer to page 8 to page 9 of the marked up copy. I think that there's no questions. Please proceed. Clause 4, bracket 3 is to amend Scale 1 of Part 1A to C of the rates. The amendment to the numbers is the same as the amendment made to Part 1 of Scale 1. You may refer to page 17 to 18 of the marked up copy. The content is pretty much the same. Clause 4, bracket 4 is to amend Scale 2, A to C. The amendments to the number is also the same as the rates under Part 1 of Scale 1. Thank you. Any other questions? We have completed the clause-by-clause scrutiny. Legal advisor to the Bills Committee. Is there any questions regarding the legal matters or the drafting of the bill? Thank you, Chairman. Apart from the matters set out in the letter we sent to the administration, we have not noticed any problems relating to the drafting of the bill. Thank you. The Bills Committee has completed scrutinizing the clauses to the bill. Will members move amendment to the bill? None. After the meeting, the administration will propose a date on the resumption of the second reading of the bill. The Secretariat will handle the matter. Any other business? There being no other business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.